Okay, here we go. 6 p.m. CET, Zurich time. That's Singularity University Chapter Zurich event number 2. We welcome you all from each and every single corner of the world. Tonight and or today or this morning for some one of you, we will deep dive into very relevant topic. Just to give you a flavor of it, we will talk about artificial intelligence and absolutely the future of education. For the ones that didn't join our first event, let me introduce briefly our leadership team. My name is Alessandro Meli, chapter lead. I am an automotive and mobility advisor. And together with the other chapter lead team, we run the CU-SU chapter Zurich. And before moving forward, let me briefly introduce you to Biagio Gentile.
Hello everyone, I'm very happy to see all of you here tonight, or even this morning for some of you. My name is Biagio Gentile. I'm the co-ambassador of the SU Zurich chapter, and I'm a managing director into the service industry and the touristic sector, a technology enthusiast and a resilient game changer. Let's go on with presentation. I introduce you now to Diego. Diego, the camera is yours.
Diego, you are on mute.
Thank you for giving me a handover, and sorry for this. Pleasure having you all online in our webinar second event today. I'm Diego Sperduti. I'm a sales executive in the energy industry. I'm a very enthusiast of blockchain and a promoter in the sustainability industry. We are almost there. It's a pleasure to introduce you Andrea Stimac, our co-ambassador, and also our moderator for this event. So I hand you over to you, Andrea, and let's the show begin.
Thank you, Alessandro. Thank you, Biagio. Thank you, Diego. Hello, everyone, and good evening to our European participants, and good morning to the ones overseas. So my name is Andrea Stimac, and I'm marketing strategist, business creativity, and change advisor. It has been a month since our launch event, and it seems to me lots of you who participated last time are here again, but we are thrilled to see some new names too. So without further ado, I wish you a warm welcome to the second event of Singularity University Zurich chapter. First, Alessandro will tell us more about Zurich chapter and some very exciting news. So Alessandro, the mic is yours.
Thanks, Andrea, for handovering it to me. Let me briefly brief you about what we do here at SingularityU chapter Zurich. Our mission is basically to educate and empower you with the tools and the skill to address the humanity grand challenges, leveraging on a massive usage of exponential growing and convergent technology. And this will be, of course, our roadmap during our discussion tonight. Our purpose is to create here in Switzerland a very united and vibrant community able to reach this future of wealth and abundance together. And before moving toward to our very, very impressive speaker list that decided freely to dedicate their time to us tonight, and Andrea will introduce their life, their achievements, and their bio properly afterwards, we would like to share with you a great news for our chapter. And I'm extremely honored, and all of us, we're really blessed that Kyle Hermans and Paul Roberts, both Singularity University faculty and at the same time working partner at Be Courageous, have decided to join on a stable base. So you will see them more and more engaged across the next events in our community, in our leadership team, and basically in our chapters. That's all from my side, Andrea. I mean, probably you can switch to properly introduce our speakers tonight. Andrea, you're on mute.
We have definitely extraordinary speakers today or tonight. And I would say we have Dirkx and Esther Wojcicki from Singularity University and Dr. Arthur Vayloyan from Bitcoin Suisse. But I would like to give mic and spotlight to Paul Roberts for Journey Kickoff. And Paul, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning and good afternoon to everybody. It's great to be here. It's great to be able to kick this off. And guys, thank you very much for asking us to be here. I'm going to just share a slideshow with you, and we're just going to be sort of priming the pump at the moment. So what we want to share with you is this idea. I'm Paul Roberts, as I said. I'm faculty at Singularity University. I'm also an innovation consultant and a learning and leadership consulting at Be Courageous Innovation. As we go through, I just want to sort of give you a mindset shift. You know, we understand this concept that the map is not the territory, that we all have a map in our head of the way we think the world is. And as we've seen over the last 3 months, our map of the way we think the world is has really been shifted quite significantly. And as we go forward with all of the exponential change that is going to keep coming, that territory is going to keep changing. And we've got all these filters in our head that tell us that this is the way the world should be. And those filters are blocking us from seeing what the true future is. So as we go forward, we have to start to challenge ourselves, because we're living in a world where we are going to see these exponential technologies, computers, networks, sensors, space exploration, as we saw attempted yesterday by SpaceX, sensors, mixed reality, VR, AR, artificial intelligence, which is part of this webinar, nanotechnologies, quantum computing, digital manufacturing, robotics, digital medicine. They're all on an exponential trend, and they're going to keep moving forward and forward. One of the big things about these technologies is that they are not only just converging together, but they're reinforcing each other. So an exponential is going to get more and more exponential, which means fundamentally that we are living in the slowest time we're ever going to live in again. Now, I know during this COVID crisis, which is a terrible pandemic, that we feel that the pace is both quick and slow at the same time. But as we come out of this, we're going to see a fundamental difference, and we've got to bring that into our head. I'll give you an example of what is driving this. At the heart of this is the exponential affordability of computing power. This was something that Ray Kurzweil, one of the founders of Singularity University, presented to us. He went all the way back to 1890 and he plotted how much computing power you could get for $1,000. And he plotted it all the way through to today. And this is on a logarithmic scale. So you can see that that curve is curving itself, which means that it's accelerating at an accelerating rate. With the spread of the virus, we get a bit of a better understanding of what we mean by exponential, about how things can all of a sudden explode. But one of the things I just want to show you here, 1961, a gigaflop, which is a way of measuring computing power, cost you $160 billion, which is a little bit of a billion sort of moment, right? By 2017, that cost 3 cents. That's what has happened over that time period. And it's going to keep moving forward and forward and forward. So today, for about $1,000, you can get about the computing power of a mouse brain. For $1,000 by 2030, you're going to get about the computing power of a human brain. By 2050, you are going to get the computing power of all 9 billion human brains for $1,000. That's an exponential increase. And that's the framing we need to look at the world at as we go forward through learning and all of the other aspects. They're going to change our society. I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't actually think in logarithmic scales. So if you wanted to take a linear version of this, the axis on the left, the vertical axis is actually logarithmic on this, but this is what it actually looks like. So right here, you can see the amount of change that you've had in the last 12 years. But going forward, what that means is it looks like this. So if you keep even thinking that things are going to move at today's rate of change, you're going to be so far behind in terms of the exponential change. Today is almost going to look like 1940. It's that much of an exponential change. And we have to keep that in our head as we go forward. because it's the exponential future of society that we're talking about. Society, if you've read Harari's Sapiens, and if you haven't, I recommend you do read Harari's Sapiens. Society's been set up in a way that we are simplifying the chaos of all of these, at the moment, 7.6 billion human beings. And we've simplified it by establishing social norms, which are starting to change under this crisis. We've simplified it by our belief systems, which are starting to change under this crisis. We've simplified it by the rules we've established in society that are starting to shift under this crisis. And we've simplified it by the hierarchies in society, which are also starting to shift in this crisis. But as we have this exponential technologies driven in a great degree by computing and artificial intelligence, we shift from simplifying chaos to this idea of coordinating complexity. All of these massive systems that are all connected and coordinated with each other. And that changes the future of society. Because we often look, when we're trying to imagine what the world looks like, we often do this. We say, okay, let's just think rationally, take everything we know and try and figure it out exactly in our rational mindset. Or we do this, which is the orange one, we go, okay, what's happening over there? That's the diverse thinking. Then we start to wish, then we start to go, well, maybe in an analogy, it could be like this. If we've had a few drinks and we're all sitting around together, maybe we're in the absurd and irrelevant. Wouldn't it be funny if it was this way? But in reality, we need to start to change our beliefs. And if we start to change our beliefs about the future, we start to ask ourselves, what do we need to unlearn? So as we go forward and we listen to the fantastic speakers that are coming, we need to start to ask ourselves, what do I fundamentally believe today that may not be true in the future? And how do I start to see this completely differently? What biases am I bringing in that is preventing me from seeing an exponential future? Here's some things. We're going to look at how are people going to learn. That's fairly obvious one, right? How are they going to learn? Are they going to do it in person? They're going to go online? Where? In person, online? How are they going to learn? From whom are they going to learn? Are we going to learn from another human being? Are we going to learn one-on-one with a human being? Are we going to have an AI assistant that's going to help us learn? One of the things we have to ask ourselves is, when in our lives are we going to learn? So with all of this change going on around us, what are our careers going to look like? Are we going to go in and out of them, back and forth and in and out, learn, work, learn, work, learn, work, and start to move in a world like that? It may be very different, especially if you live to be 100 and healthy. You're going to have a different framing. And then we also have to ask yourself that fundamental question of why are we going to learn? Are we going to learn to work? Are we going to learn for learning's sake? If we've got a world full of robotics and we've got artificial intelligence anywhere, do we need to learn? Those are some of the questions that we need to ask ourselves as we go through. So the guys, thank you very much for asking us to be here, guys. The guys have got an incredible schedule for you for the next little while. I'm going to ask you to keep these framings in your head as we go forward. I'll check in with you after the first couple of speakers. Please start to break the filters in your head, and we'll see where we land in a couple of hours. Thanks very much, guys.
Paul, thank you so much. I will join Alessandro and all of us by welcoming you and Kyle in our community. We are really thrilled to have you both on board. And definitely this will be an extraordinary add-on to keep the quality of our content and networking very high. So let's start with our first featured speaker, Jos. We are so deeply grateful that Jos is here with us today. And allow me to say a few words about Jos, which really is not so easy, as she's an incredibly special person and entrepreneur. Jos is CEO and co-founder of Binova AI. She's diversity and inclusion, cross-cultural awareness, AI, and EI in education and Singularity University. She's international public speaker, author of 2 books. I have to say that I saw that third is announced, and she is a world traveler. Jos founded an award-winning organization in South Africa and co-launched a mobile app that provides free daily health information. She's passionate about technology, creativity, and building scalable solutions that change the world. Jos, a very warm welcome to Zurich chapter. Alessandro will take over from me with questions. Alessandro, mic is yours.
Jos, really thanks even from my side to be here with us and to share with us your really valuable time. If you want, I can hand over you the screen, or completely up to you. Or I mean, it's definitely clear you have and you had an incredible life. You are so inspirational for all of us. And probably the majority of our community knows that you have been hosted recently by Peter Diamandis in Abundance 360. And your work is out there. And I mean, most of us knows it. And for the ones that probably don't really know you in deep as we do, would you like maybe so kind to tell us a bit more who you are and what you do?
Well, I appreciate that. First of all, hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me and for all the kind words. And I want to say a huge heartfelt thank you, because the team behind SingularityU Zurich has been patient, kind, professional, diligent, awesome, energetic. So massive thank you for making this a really great experience. But, and Andrea, you've done and I just want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly, because I know it's either Andrea or Andrea.
You're on mute. You are on mute, Andrea.
Andrea.
I cannot unmute myself. So yeah, Andrea, it's Andrea.
Andrea. Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
wonderful. Wonderful. Well, I just want to say thank you to all of you for putting this on. So congratulations on that. To share a few more words, I was born in Brazil. I grew up in 12 different countries. And I think this global upbringing has been really amazing, because it's meant that I've had this wonderful global experience and been able to meet people from all over the world, and allowed that to really have shaped my own journey as well. I've always been very passionate about education and the future of work and the future of learning, and all of that from a very safe and equitable space. Now, we've seen COVID-19 rock the world, but to be fair, we were facing challenges in education and diversity and inclusion, and even just equality across the workspace much, much longer than through this period, this pandemic. What I'm grateful for, because I do try to find moments to be grateful, and I find gratitude in everything, and that includes in this period that we've gone through now, is for many of us, it has been time to stop and breathe. Are we living the life that we want to be living? Are we taking every single day and making the most of it? Are we actually living against our passions and building a better world, a better community, even just at home, just starting at home? Are we there for our family? So it's been a moment of reflection. And I think for those of us who have taken that approach to this time, we can hopefully come out of it stronger and excited about the future, and with a fresh perspective that allows us to be better moving forward.
Appreciate it, Joss. It's clear that across only one of the last endeavor that you are moving forward through Binova.ai, you are giving to the world a glimpse and a taste of which one could be one of our potential future. But upon your experience, upon your life, which one do you believe are the educational challenges that if moving forward we don't solve it, will continue to get worse and potentially even deteriorates our ability to survive in the world of the future?
So I think that's a great question. So I'm going to park the artificial intelligence piece until a little bit later. I want to kind of set the stage, and I know Esther is going to be speaking about this as well, the relevant skills for the future. So we're in very good hands here, but I'll explain a little bit our approach to thinking about the future of learning and the future of work. What we have essentially is a mismatch in the education system, from kindergarten up until 12th grade and then into university. And I'm speaking roughly, 18, whether it's 12th grade or senior year or however if you're in a European system or in a different system, roughly speaking until 16 or 18, and then moving on to higher education. That's a system that we've been following for a very long time. Now, one of the biggest issues with that system is that, one, it teaches us skills that are no longer relevant. It's teaching us skills that are not actually preparing us for the future of work. They're not keeping up with this world that's constantly transforming. And secondly, these skills, learning them now, actually have a greater gap of inequality than when you would have learned them 20 years ago. Let me explain. When we were in school 20 to 30 to 40 years ago, the skills that we were learning in that system were okay to get by. Okay, so at that time, it was okay to be learning the skills that we were learning at school. However, we have kept this system going, but our world hasn't slowed down. In fact, as we've already seen, it's exponentially growing. It's exponentially going faster. The technology we are building is so good that we are unable to keep up with it. Now we have two options. We have some crazy idea on how we could potentially compete against the technology we're building. Or we could look at it and say, let's be more human. Let's be better at being human. And that's where a 21st century skills framework has been put together by global thought leaders. I'll break down this 21st century skills framework, also known as future skills. It's a very clear way of saying, okay, these are the skills that are important for the future. And this is what we need to be thinking about if we want to really focus on stepping up and thriving in the 21st century. This skills framework is divided into competencies that are foundational core competencies that'll not only set us apart from the technology that we're building, but will enable us to be more creative, more collaborative, more resilient, more adaptable, and better at solving problems together. Now you might think this is a pipe dream. Sure, these future skills, they sound so far away, but they are actually the skills that we all need in most everyday situations where we want, even navigating a pandemic like the one we're facing today. If you look at a chart of global leadership and responses to the pandemic and look at education systems and compare these, you'll see some very interesting patterns emerge, which we should discuss, but probably not in such an open setting. We will discuss them one day. It's absolutely fascinating. So in short, our education system, one, has not moved with the times, and two, does not teach skills of the future. And that's not just in primary, secondary, or higher education. It's also in adult learning. So we have to find ways in which we can structure and reskill and upskill for this new tomorrow. Another very interesting point that's come up, and this is why where I want to introduce the AI. One of the biggest gaps that I've seen traveling the world, working in different education systems across the world, is a lack of scalable and sustainable solutions. It's absolutely fantastic to equip kids with a new teacher, right? We can serve what, max 60 kids in one class? But that's exhausting for the teacher. At the end of the day, that's not a scalable model. And what artificial intelligence does is it really allows us to build scalable and sustainable learning models. So what we do at Binova AI is we take artificial intelligence, we take emotional intelligence, i.e. those skills of the future. We combine these two into artificial intelligence mentors, and we deploy them across all kinds of platforms: WhatsApp, Slack, Microsoft Teams, G Suite, so that everybody can actually have access to these 21st century skills, so that we can get to those leaps in education that we have to get to. And if COVID-19 hasn't made this clear enough, and if what I've just said hasn't made this clear enough, just think about the rising unemployment numbers at our doorstep. Every single country is facing this in the world today. Our people, we as humans, are not ready. We are not skilled enough to handle some of the biggest challenges that are coming our way, and that's simply been accelerated through COVID-19.
Thanks for that, Joss. And I take the opportunity to tie up immediately with a very relevant point that you mentioned a few seconds ago. In your opinion, which one are the most relevant or the most important innovation in the education process that you have seen or you can think about in the upcoming years around the world?
Thank you so much for the question. I think there are many different models that are really re-looking at how education is working. So as we're reshaping this as a collective, right? It's a collective responsibility. It's a collective journey that we're on. Everybody's voices should be heard. Some things that we have to always prioritize are inclusivity. Are we building models of education that are truly inclusive for those in rural communities, those in refugee communities, or those of us with in Dubai, actually, I saw there was somebody from the UAE in the chat today. They have a beautiful term where we refer to people with disabilities as people of determination. So are we building truly inclusive learning and education experiences? One. Number two, are the methodologies, the techniques that we're choosing to teach, are they sustainable? Are they scalable? Again, it's wonderful to do workshops, to have brainstorming sessions. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But one of the things is that the knowledge stays within those participants that are able to be there. However, if we look at scalable solutions, something that is easy to deploy, quick to deploy, and high quality, that allows more of us to have access, then we can start tapping into some of those skill gaps that we're currently experiencing around the world. And number three, creativity in learning. No one has ever said that sitting behind your laptop for 8 hours a day, imagine this actually, imagine if you were 10 years old and someone pointed at an adult and said to you, in 20 years, you're gonna be just like that, sitting behind your laptop 10 hours a day, too busy to play, too busy to create, too busy to ask questions. Your 10-year-old self would have said, absolutely not. There's no way I'm gonna do that. And that's the spirit that we need to really tap into again. And we can, and now is our chance to rethink that. So at Binova, we've combined all of these elements of thinking and really are training now the AI to be able to supplement that as a learning tool. Again, scalable, I just saw a question pop up, so I just want to quickly address it here in the chat. Scalable models are really great because if we don't think about what's scalable, and again, you know, there's a time and a place, right? But right now we're kind of in a global education crisis, which is why we need to be more strategic about these amazing tools that we have and using them to reach more people. I don't think that scalable should be a compromise on quality. Again, everybody still deserves that quality learning. The quality questions that they have to answer about their own journey. So there is a lot of space to be very innovative. I'd love to hear your ideas. You're always welcome to reach out to me, of course, but I think if we can focus on creativity and learning, resetting the system, and using technology and other models to really make sure that we are able to exponentially meet the needs of the future, then we can start thinking about what is going to be required to rebuild our education systems.
Thanks, Joss. Please allow us another question. Do you believe that your multicultural view of the world, your multiple travel, and your way of growing up through different countries and cultures have, within a certain extent, influenced or driven your ideas around the education topic?
Thank you for this question. I hope so, because I've seen classrooms in South Sudan post the war with 80 kids sitting on sand in a classroom with a chalkboard, and that's okay, and that is what it is. And then I say 2 weeks ago, I mean 2 months ago, because we've been in lockdown. I lie. 2 months ago, I was in Dubai at one of the most affluent schools in the world. And I think what struck me most about both scenarios that are just so opposite is that at the end of the day, neither sets of students was really receiving the education that they needed. Because at the core of it, education is about making us humans that reach our full potential. That is the job of the education system. It is to enable you, Alessandro, to live up against your talents, for Paul to do the same, for Andrea to do the same, for all of us to say, these are my talents, this is what I'm bringing to the world, and this is my niche, and this is my space where I can create that. But we've so far pushed that out of our reality, instead focusing on some systems that then we attach our entire identity to. If you really trace back to what you may have wanted when you were younger, and you look at every single choice you made, you know, because it's always one or two choices. You always go A or B. And all of a sudden this route leads you to somewhere you didn't anticipate going. And in part that is because our education system is structured against an old way of thinking when we were preparing people to do way different types of work than we need today. So at this moment in time, we have the opportunity to say, what is education about? It is about getting back to the core of who we are as humans and how we turn up, and what are the best ways to do that. So yes, I do hope that, having seen different countries across the world, you know what, Alessandro, actually what it does for me is that it just makes it harder to fall asleep at night, because I get a lot of anxiety thinking about, you know, how can we make this happen? And now is the time. So yes, I'm grateful for it. And I just think that together we can really achieve these goals, and we have to. It's like, it's a beautiful ambition to have for all of us to contribute to a better tomorrow.
Appreciated your intervention, Jos, and we really appreciated the time that you dedicated to us, and it's even a very important moment for us and for the entire community, as apologies, I have to share the screen. Just a second. Jos has been extremely generous with us, as she decided to gift our community with 3 giveaway. The winner will be announced in, after the meeting via email, and just to avoid to breach the GDPR, unfortunately, we will reach just the winner. We implemented a kind of funny roulette system, and we know which are our winners. But Jos, believe me, I tried to be prepared to say something about this a really valuable gift, but they had a kind of emotional, how can I say, eruption in some way, because going through the preparation, I saw, and you know, we are in touch since a while, and I saw really the pieces of your stories, the stories that you told us, your story that is out there, behind every and each single gift that you see on the screen. Therefore, really, I wouldn't have the heart to come better than you. Could you be so kind to spend some word on each one of these gifts that you decided to leave to our community?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your graciousness. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so this is very exciting, and I'm happy to share some of these gifts that we, together with an incredible team, have been able to bring out into the world. I'll be very quick, mindful of the other speakers. The first is the book called Tackled, which we wrote myself and an Oxford researcher called Davy. We wrote it with a team of 2 other people, one based in India, one based in the Netherlands at the time. We interviewed almost 800 boys and young men on masculinity and gangsterism and what they wish they were learning. And this was in 2017. We already saw these massive challenges of unemployed youth. So it was an incredible experience with support from FIFA, from Sia Kolisi, who is a South African national rugby captain. So that was really beautiful. And then last year we wrote Girls Do Good, which is an augmented kids coloring book, 11 real life superheroes, 11 girls changing the world. Is so super. They're just such beautiful kids, and they're just living their passion on earth, which is really wonderful. So both those books we're more than happy to share with the community. And then a really fun prize, which we've never done before, is we want to give away an AI mentor. And I don't know how to, how do we show it on the slide? Because we don't want to create that mentor. We don't want to add any visuals to it. Think of it as an AI brain. Explore with us this real future of learning. And yeah, we're so excited to work with the team that wins there. There are a few caveats. We have to be mindful that it has to be an organization that's either deployed on Microsoft Teams or Google. So that prize is a little tricky still, so we'll have to work together. I hope you understand. But we want you to really embrace some of this future thinking around learning. And I can't wait to hear who the winners are and to get to know you better. Please reach out anytime, guys. The website's in the chat, and we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much again, Jos. In my name, leadership team, and the entire community of SingularityU chapter Zurich.
So thank you, Alessandro. Thank you, Jos. And this was really great conversation, sharing your thoughts about innovation in education and about better future. And as you say, here to change the world. So now let's go on with our second speaker from Singularity University, Esther Wojcicki. Esther is international known educator, consultant, speaker, and CEO and global Moonshots in education. Esther is Distinguished Visiting Scholar at Dirkx at Stanford, MacArthur Foundation Research Fellow, California Teacher of the Year, and Charles O'Malley Award recipient from Columbia Scholastic Press. She was awarded an honorary doctorate from Palo Alto University and from Rhode Island School of Design. She is mother of 3 successful women: Susan, CEO of YouTube; Janet, professor at UC San Francisco; and Anne, CEO of 23andMe. Esther, a warm welcome to Zurich chapter. We are so keen to hear from you. What are the most relevant skills for the future? Esther, the stage is yours.
Myself there. Thank you so much, Andrea, for this warm welcome, and I'm very excited to be here with you. And I must say, very excited to be following Jos, who is really amazing person and doing some amazing work in the world. So I'm still a teacher in the classroom, and so I am very practical. The question is like, what works and what doesn't work for kids all over the world in terms of education? And the main thing, every kid in the world just about is on Zoom. And there was an article today in the New York Times about Zoom fatigue and why everybody is so exhausted with Zoom and how we should use it. And look, I agree 100% with this. And then the other question is like, what about kids who are not able to access Zoom and that are in other areas of the world where there is no Zoom, so to speak? But I'll just talk first about the Zoom situation. Number one problem is that the teacher continues to lecture the whole time. So that system was developed more than 300 years ago, where the teacher knew everything. And today we know that the teacher is not the number one resource in the world. In fact, sitting in front of you as a teacher might be kids who know a lot more than you do. And they are not given any opportunity to participate or any opportunity to say what they know or what they think. And I think that that is one of the deficits of the regular teaching model and the online teaching model. And so what I've done in my classes, just to tell you, and it might be a little bit of a shock to some teachers, is that I have put the students in charge of the Zoom call. And it's not 100% of the time, but it's 50% of the time. They lead the call. They put their friends into groups in the rooms. They talk about issues that they are concerned about. And the reason this is so effective is because the main thing that kids are missing about school, number one, their friends. That's it. And so if you can give them an opportunity to interact virtually with their friends, they'll all go online. Because one of the problems we see, 50% of the kids aren't even going online. And so they need to be able to go online, talk to their friends, collaborate with their friends. And this gives them a legitimized way to do that. And so just to give you a little further example, that's probably because my students are very technically sophisticated. They are producing a full-sized newspaper while they're at home online from their own computers. So they figured out a system how they can collaborate with each other. And the paper was sent to the printer last night. And this is a full-sized New York Times size newspaper that they're doing on their own. So what did they learn in doing this? Number one, they learned communication skills. Number two, collaboration skills. Number three, they learn all the technical skills. Number four, they improve their writing because they're rewriting and evaluating each other's writing. And when they do that using Google Docs. They learn something. When you're the teacher, you learn a lot more than when you're sitting there passively. And so that's one of the things that I would like to recommend. Kids around the world, a project that involves multiple kids is more impactful in learning than memorizing facts that were relevant 100 years ago. We need to remember the world has changed dramatically, and some of those things we're forcing kids to memorize in the name of education, in fact, is not education. It's useless, and that's why kids don't remember. So that's the first thing. The second thing, well, that was a big first thing, by the way. The second thing that I'd like to just talk about a little bit is that the devices. So kids don't all have computers. That's like, what do you do? I'll tell you, I've been all over the world too. I've traveled many places. I was actually in Romania, staying at a farmhouse with a farmer. He had no Wi-Fi for my computer. All the food was produced on the farm. If I wanted an omelet for breakfast, he had to run out and get the egg from the chicken. But let me tell you what this guy had. He had a cell phone. He was on his cart, which was drawn by a horse, and he was pulling things around the farm and talking on his cell phone. So everybody around the world, I'm not kidding, wherever they are, they have a cell phone. And so what we can do is education can be delivered through a cell phone, through giving kids an opportunity to collaborate with other people on their phone. There's a lot of apps on the phone, a lot of them actually from YouTube. YouTube has learn at home on your phone. It's an effective way to transmit information. So as I said, I'm very practical because I'm usually in a classroom with 50 kids. My classes are those classes that everybody says doesn't work. I have 60 kids actually. So how do you do it with 60 kids? Let me tell you, you put them in groups. So I have groups 1 of 4, another group of 4. So actually when I call roll, I just call the group 1, group 2, group 3. I only call, like 12 groups, because I don't have to call each individual. They all work together in groups, and they're all really excited to be there because they're with their friends. And so this is something also I think can be done for kids living in a variety of unfortunate situations around the world, where you can work with a group of kids and you can access information online and talk about this information. There was a guy in India, his name is Sugata Mitra. I don't know if you heard about Sugata, but he had the hole in the wall experiment, which he cemented a computer into the wall of a poor area of town. And then he just stepped back and watched what happened. And all the kids came and they were all playing with the computer and doing all kinds of things. God, who knows what. But in a month, he wanted to see what they could learn in a month. And he was amazed at what those kids learned in a month, just collaborating with each other and looking at the screen of this computer. So what that tells me is that when kids have an opportunity to work together and collaborate and have one source where they can find some information, like I said, it can be a phone, most ideally it can be a computer, they're going to do pretty well, or better than what's going on in many cases. So now if they do have a Zoom call and they do have this opportunity to be in a group in a classroom with defined instruction, what I would advise the teacher is not to lecture for 60 minutes at a stretch. The kids just can't take it, and they're not learning anything at all. So I have a new website. It's called wojway.com, W-O-J-W-A-Y, wojway.com. It's free. And it's the newsletter on there is to try to help people, parents and teachers, learn how to learn in the COVID crisis. And while, you know, we're opening up here in America, and I know a lot of other countries are opening up, it's very different, and the world has changed a lot. And we're still gonna have to change the way we're teaching, because we're not going back to the traditional classroom. It's not going to be what we had last, you know, January. It's going to be different. And you need to be able to adapt to this new change. So I would be very happy to take questions. I'm very excited to be at SingularityU in Zurich. I lived in Geneva for 2 years, and I spent a lot of time going to Zurich. And even, I must tell you, I love Zurich. And so I'm very excited to be part of this, this webinar. So if anybody has questions, I'd be very happy to answer the questions.
Esther, we really appreciated your speech, and our community knows as well that you are the author of several books, but probably the most relevant, the most known is How to Rise Successful People. And personally, as a parent, I went through and I found it really useful, especially when I have the impression that I mirror or I have the behaviors that my parents had with me. And this leads me to a question that we received recently, and it's a bit that is going around, but it's pretty relevant. The situation is the following: when someone is asking me as a parent or over another parents, do you want your kid to be like your parents? I mean, probably 99.9% of the people will answer no, absolutely. Maybe someone yes, but the minority. But if they ask me, or if they are asked to say, do you want your kids to be like you? The situation is a bit different. In your opinion, which are the kind of biases and I mean, even a bit the struggle and the sufferance that we had in this multi-layer model, no? In which we don't want to be our parents, and as well, probably we don't just to be good enough as parents, and we don't want to kids ourselves. So how we, back to the original point, how we can secure and try to drive our kids to find their own path, their own way, and even more important, their own self?
Well, that's a good question. It's a little bit complicated, of course, but the children do copy your behavior. So, for example, if you use your cell phone all the time, and you wonder why your kids seem to be using their cell phone all the time, you don't have to look any farther than at yourself. All your habits, everything that you're doing is what they copy. And so I have this acronym in my book that I just like to talk about for a minute that I think can be very helpful for parents and for teachers and for everybody. And the acronym is TRICK. T-R-I-C-K, and every letter stands for something important that I think is missing in many cases from relationships. T stands for trust, respect, independence, collaboration, and kindness. And so one of the #1 things that is important for parents to do is to trust their kids. And that doesn't mean trust them to do all kinds of big things, like take the car out for a drive or something. It means little things, a sense that you, the parent, believe in your child and trust their abilities to be able to, I don't know, make dinner tonight, or go to the store and get the right things. But this builds on the question you just asked, because what you're asking really is, kids may or may not want to be like you, depending on the attributes that you had that while you were parenting. So if you're a kind person, if you're a trusting respectful person. You know, if you give people a lot of independence, then they tend to want to be more like you than if you're the kind of person that knows everything and very dictating and very hard to get along with. And so I think it's important for you to realize that they copy you. I mean, I had this really crystal clear example that happened to me when I was first teaching, and that I saw kids talking to each other in the classroom. I had put them in groups, and I thought to myself, my God, they're copying me. They sound just like me. And I was like, how did that happen? And then I realized that they indeed were copying me, and that I never said copy me. It's just instinctive. And it sounded like there were kids all over the room sounding just like me. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I did have an impact. But I think when you're with your children now, you know, most of the waking hours, they are going to copy your behavior, and whether you want it or not. And if you want them to be like you, you have to exhibit that behavior that shows you trust and respect them and give them independence. Hope
Thanks.
that answered.
Thanks for that, Esther. We really appreciate it. And I remember we had really deep and long conversation during our time at Singularity University. If you allow us, we have another question that is flown in the chat from Alberto Grossman, Brazil. And he said, like, my concern is on health development for kids. I have a 13-year son, and his interest is completely focused on electronic devices, mobile games, tablet, etc., but without any interest in physical exercise. How this is addressed in the current system education around the world?
I think he's not alone. That's one thing he needs to know. That this is, I mean, before this pandemic, the idea was get your kid outside so they can exercise. Now, the question is, you know, really, how can you do it safely? So one thing that I think is very helpful for kids that are really so addicted to these computers and computer games, one thing that I have done is I say for every hour that you're on a computer game or playing computer game, you have to spend 1 hour learning how to code computer games, because you love them so much, you need to learn to make them. So having that skill of being able to code is really important. And I have not gotten a single kid who said no, which is kind of remarkable. They all like it. As a matter of fact, some of them, this was prior to the pandemic, so we could actually go to the store. We went to the store, bought all the equipment to build a gaming computer. Can you imagine this? A 10-year-old kid building a computer. You just think about all the skills that they're learning when they're doing this. But now getting back to your question about like, what can you do about this? I would have them go online and read some articles about why exercise is important. And sometimes getting that information from another source, not from you because you're the parent, but getting that information from online or from some other group, or actually be great if they had friends who were more interested in exercise that they could spend time talking to. And then one thing that they should do would be every hour, they should get up for 10 minutes every hour and do something. And if you can't go outside, well, you can lift weights at home, or, you know, you can do push-ups, or you can do sit-ups, or you can do something. I would just explain to him that life is pretty simple, living a healthy life. It encompasses sleeping enough, eating enough, and exercising enough. Those are the main components, and he's missing the exercise part of it. And you can't be a healthy individual when you don't exercise. So that's what I would recommend.
Thanks again, Esther. there any other question flowing into the chat, Andrea?
I will just jump in. If Esther, thank you for this, and I would like to ask you to repeat the website you mentioned, which is free for reading, because we didn't catch up, and we would like to share with our participants. So, can you repeat the web page? You were talking about the new one.
Yes, the new web page is Wojway, W-O-J, first three letters of my name, W-O-J-W-A-Y, Wojway.com.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So Esther, thank you very much for these interesting thoughts. I don't know, Alessandro, we have some questions maybe in the chat, because we already start to answer and put some links and all the stuff, so to share with our participants and with our community.
There is indeed the really last one.
Yes,
Esther,
great.
are asking you if you could please repeat the title of your book. If you don't want, I can repeat it for you. And if you can basically re-explain the meaning of the acronyms TRIC.
Oh, sure. Okay, so the title of my book is How to Raise Successful People. And it's also in German. And in German, it's called Panda Mama. And so you can get it on Amazon, both in Germany or in German. I think it's probably European, both of them. But it's How to Raise Successful People. And that's the title of the book. And as far as the acronym, I'll go over that again. It's T-R-I-C-K, trick. And in English, of course, it's like the trick to make things better. Everybody's looking for the key to something. Well, it's the trick to improve the world. And trick stands for trust. And trusting people is really important. And actually, I just want to add one thing here. When you trust your child, they trust themselves. And when they trust themselves, they pursue their interests. They have grit. And we all want kids to have grit and to stick to it. And kids that don't stick to things are kids who are afraid that they don't know how to do it and that they don't believe in themselves. So trust is really important. So T for trust, R, respect, I, independence, C, collaboration or courage, either one, and K, kindness. And there is a company in Denmark that has created an app for kindness, how to teach people kindness based on my book. And the name of the company is Area 9 Lyceum. And I can send you the link to this, and people can do it for free. Because one thing that I think is so important in this pandemic is for all of us to be kind to each other. We're all struggling in one way or another. And kindness not only helps the person receiving it, but all the research shows that it also has health benefits for the person giving it. So kindness is so important today. We will get through this, but it's going to be a little difficult. And with kindness, we can make it better. So any other questions, Andrea?
Alessandro, do we have any questions in chat?
Any more?
No. So thank you. So many informations and so many outstanding thoughts. So thank you very much, Esther, for this sharing with us your knowledge and experience. And honestly, I'm impressed and inspired by your achievements and experience. And I trust our participants too. So now we can move on, and I will invite Paul, our Faculty of Courageous Leadership, to connect dots. So Paul, the stage is yours.
Thanks very much. You know, that was absolutely fascinating, Joss and Esther. As you can tell from the opening, I don't usually have a problem talking, but that was so deeply moving on a human basis, both from Joss and the way, Joss, you were tapping into artificial intelligence and you're looking at those scalable results to be able to reach everybody. And Esther, right down to that fundamental way of raising good humans, or how to raise successful people, as you put it. I have a 12-year-old daughter, and so it just, you know, landed very, very strongly with me. And I really like this eat, sleep, exercise thing. And one of the key takeaways that I had was we as adults could do a fair amount of this stuff a little better, you know? You said they model what they see, but you know, the idea is, I'm for sure when we're finished here, I'm gonna do my 10 minutes of push-ups in the living room behind me. So thank you very much for that. What I would ask everybody on the call, because you know, we've all been listening very, very carefully, is if they could in the chat section actually put their top 2 or 3 takeaways from what they're hearing, the connections they're making. One of I'll just sort of, it's the human side of it that is so strongly. Joss, you actually said, you know, we can either compete against all this coming technology, or we can be better at being human. And I think that has been, for me, one of the great things here. So if we can have people put their top 2 or 3 takeaways in the chat there, and we'll share those with everybody afterwards. But that was absolutely amazing, guys. Who would like to lead by putting a top takeaway? I know that we've got a few of them as we've been coming through. Like kindness is key. Lovely, thank you very much, Esther. Biagio, you put that in there. Who else would like to sort of, in that chat, write in how it's landing for them? One of the connections that I also heard here was this idea that the lecture as the source of information, that's a 300 years old approach. One of the things, Esther, I think I might have heard from you too, was that it was almost established to set up the British Empire. How do we get everybody to know exactly the same thing and do exactly the same thing so we can run an empire without telecommunications? Kids know so much and we need them to share. I thought it was a fascinating way that you had set that together. And then Joss, you've got this idea of scalable, sustainable, and inclusive, which is a huge part of making sure that this abundant future that was outlined at the very beginning is a critical part to this. We've got a key takeaway here. Collaboration is the key future skill in working and learning. You know, there's an interesting thing that you said, if you don't mind me just building off that, is you said the C, Esther specifically, you said the C in trick could be collaboration or courage, which I found very interesting. Are you correlating them in some way, or could you say a little bit more about that?
Well, I think that independence, collaboration, well, especially anything connected with innovation. So I could also be part of innovation, but it requires you to be vulnerable. You cannot come up with a new idea. You cannot come up with some kind of a new way of doing things or looking at the world without making yourself vulnerable, because you're the one that is thinking, and you know, people can laugh at you or make fun of you or do all kinds of things. And so it takes courage for you to be able to do that. Innovation means that you're taking a step back and you're saying, before I do this, I know I'm making myself vulnerable. I know I might be, you know, people might laugh at me, but I am going to do it. And I am going to collaborate with everyone, and I'm going to come up with this idea. And if I don't do it right, well, most people don't do it right the first time. So then I'm going to treat them with kindness.
I know myself and Kyle in Be Courageous, we think that is such a critical thing, the way we treat each other and ourselves, and how we lower the level of the needed courage to come forward with the great innovation through the kindness and through that ability to accept a crazy idea. You know, I often tell people that I've done a lot of work down in Argentina. When I would fly down there, I would, you know, I got served a piece of salmon on a plane. And if I had gone back 120 years and told somebody that, you know, I'm going to be eating salmon 30,000 feet above the Amazon, they would have locked me up in the loony bin. But, you know, the idea is a real and viable idea. We just need the courage to dream that way and for it to be accepted. Thank you very much. One of the things that Shay says is giving kids the opportunity to collaborate and teach each other, inform each other, gives them a responsibility for their own learning, which of course is a lifelong journey for them. Innovation requires you to be vulnerable. That was a key takeaway. Courage is a big one here. Courage to collaborate, try to make bigger collective smartness. Takeaway that kids are always watching and copying what we do. Yeah, perception is projection. Absolutely, thank you. Very good. Guys, I'm aware that we're on the clock. If anybody else has got any key takeaways from Joss's session and Esther's session, as you process it, as we go through, please just keep it in the chat. As I said, we will be sharing that with everybody. And thank you very much.
So thank you, Paul. Anybody? No. So thank you, Paul, and that's the perfect bridge for getting into our next topic. So I'm pleased to introduce you Dr. Arthur Vayloyan. I think that I pronounced pretty well. He will talk about cryptocurrencies and the future of money. Arthur, did I pronounce this okay? Arthur Vayloyan.
Arthur is perfect. Vayloyan is even better.
Oh, nice, great. Now I will go through short bio of Arthur. Arthur is CEO and a board member at Bitcoin Suisse, a leading financial service provider specializing in crypto assets. Through his more than 25 years career, he has established himself as a thought leader and innovative pioneer in the world of finance, private banking, and microfinance. Arthur's passion for finance and positive impact on society led him to speak at the UN and to organize exchange with luminaries including Nobel Prize winner Professor Muhammad Yunus, Nassim Taleb, and Ray Kurzweil. Without further ado, Arthur, the stage is yours. Now I will just check if we can share a presentation of Arthur. Alessandro, can we share the presentation?
Give me just a second.
Yeah, just this is the question. So.
Else I can share, no problems, probably. Yes. Wonderful.
Great. So Arthur, stage is yours.
Great. And how do I proceed on the slides?
You have to tell me when I have to switch to the next one.
Okay, that's cool. Hello, everyone. That's wonderful. And as you mentioned, I was once privileged to speak to the UN on the topic of microfinance. And I was pretty nervous, as you can imagine. I'm equally nervous now. For me, it's a first at Singularity University. But emotionally and intellectually, I'm actually quite close because I was privileged to meet Ray Kurzweil many, many years back. And many of the slides I show, I go through rather quickly because I speak to a convinced audience, happy to share what I think are maybe some interesting ideas about money, technology, the future of it. But yeah, I'm sort of stealing with pride, I call it. It's a marketing slogan, because why should I come up with even better things when I have actually people which are opening up my mind? And so what I'm doing now is more sharing things that I see and things that I tend to believe that give the context of today's speech quickly. And then happy to take any question. I'm with the firm now since 3 years. As I said, microfinance, I come from nanotechnology, actually. That's my background of education in physical chemistry. And somehow I'm drawn to the small things because now I'm at Bitcoin. And let me tell you, that one of the things where I'm drawn to that topic is really the contextual thing, because I believe that we are in a world where technology is changing everything and has no respect, not even in front of money. And going through Kurzweil's slide just before, you can move on or show, keep that, because we have seen it also before. That's from Ray, and it makes really the nice case that while we think we live in a template, I see the integrated circuit, people are working hard on the next one. And just to assume that it stops now is probably pretty hefty hypothesis. It's probably better to assume that we move on quite dramatically and probably exponentially, as we can see from the past. So the next slide is just an example how things have evolved dramatically from the invention of the transistors to 2016. That's a slide from Diamandis actually, and even better today, but this is all multiplies in the trillions now. And when Intel was actually launched to 1971, we would talk about the famous flops, the floating operations per second, 100,000 per second. It was considered super fast. And now these days we have even words like 200 petaflops. This is unimaginably fast and no reason to believe it stops there. So a next slide would give another picture to that. This is just when we look at storage. And also it's not just about speed, it's also about performance vis-a-vis price. You see here a slide ending at 2014. You can get the very same 1 terabyte for $100 and no reason to believe that that journey stops here. Next slide is showing how we go smaller and smaller. And I take that actually from Ray saying, look at the things when we were in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and look at today. And why shouldn't we assume that the scale down stops here? So he's even going that our brains will connect it to the cloud and you have this instant connectivity. Things that are also a bit scary in my opinion. But here we move on to the next one, which actually shows then basically connectivity. F5 is a great function, exactly to the next one, and you just jump on to the next one because it's actually just showing where we're going, and this is connectivity in bandwidth 5G, maybe next one, where you also can see easily how the people get connected. And we heard from the previous speakers, and thanks for your insights, we heard how teaching will change, and it's not as a primer, I would say, the artificial intelligence per se, but it's a simple coming together, and technology, internet just helps. And with that, we tap more and more brains. And even from an almost classical approach, with tapping more brains, the number of N increasing per se will accelerate so many things. And so the famous Einsteins out in this world, which are undiscovered, will be discovered and bring good stuff to the world. So next slide, please. And on it goes on many aspects, but when you look at the yellow things, artificial intelligence here at the end, also very, very important, going in an exponential rhythm. I would say what is missing is the money. And money comes on the next slide here from the history of money. Please, next slide. You can see summarized a very crude story of money, where it all started from pure barter. We exchanged things. It was a bit complicated, but it worked. Then we had abstractions like the stones. We went to the precious metals. It got a bit more fancy, I would say, but it's old, but still very valid. One back. And then paper was invented. And that was the first system break. That's the thought I would like to share, because before you could actually say precious metal, it is valid, it is, you can touch it. But here came somebody, probably a banker, who came up with the invention to say, hey, let me give you a paper and that should be value. And I always say when I talk about Bitcoin, that was even much more dramatic than maybe today's cryptocurrency revolution that's taking place. Because imagine people, when they have paper in the hand, They could light their lighter and just put it in flames and it was gone. But it was perceived as valid because we all believed so. And it got even more dramatic when plastic came all along. And that was a time when I was also already conscious, very much conscious about money. And I remember in Switzerland, when they came up with the credit cards, etc., people were really aggressively against plastic money because they took the scissors, cut it off and said, here it's gone, where is your money now? We should not forget that each time this was also an adaptation to something new, and the net benefit seemed to work out to acceleration and adoption. And here we come to the network. And I would phrase the whole story of money coming to network. Cryptocurrency is just a next chapter in using what is at hand. And Bitcoin as such is a primer, the mother of them all, of course, but there is so much more evolution and experimentation going on. We simply cannot assume that when plastic money was invented, it stops there. Here is the internet, and on the internet, we have money. You can go on, please. And so it was that actually a brilliant thinker was already in 1999 saying the one thing that's missing, but that will soon be developed, it took yet another 9 years, is a reliable e-cash. And here it comes, 2008, next slide, please. In midst of the drama, in midst of the drama of the Lehman crisis, we remember all, the world was at the abyss. We all felt like it's going down soon. Here comes in October, very nicely timed, a paper out of the blue, out of the nowhere, proposing peer-to-peer e-cash. So cash in its very essence, like a note we would exchange, E for electronic, peer-to-peer, a bit peer-to-peer, the name of the game. The more we have internet interaction, the more the peer-to-peer system starts to work. But obviously, the one thing we have still today is the man in the middle. It's the central trusted party. And I'm not against that. It serves well. But I think it's natural that things say, hey, wait a minute. Why should I have somebody telling me with whom I want to interact? In cash, it actually works quite nicely. In internet, it didn't, because you couldn't see vis-a-vis who it was. And I skip a little bit fast here because this is not about Bitcoin, but let me share my enthusiasm. Bitcoin as a proposal, Bitcoin as a means of exchange of value on the internet, peer-to-peer, without central party helping us to make a trustful connection. And I'm not saying that after 10 years of Bitcoin and many, many other variations in the field of cryptocurrency that we are there, but I think it's also safe to assume that we are on the way to find out what the next version of money could be, even more so in these days where traditional money surrogates are printed, or maybe the word print is actually a bit misleading, are created out of nothing to help ease the pains we have economically these days. But at the same time, more and more people tend to believe, is this really helping us down the road in a safe way, because it has such an inflationary impact potentially. And so it's natural that people look at something else. So please move on. Here comes a picture which I'm not going to detail. It's just showing the internet and the Bitcoin application. But maybe the next one is a good one to share, because it basically positions crypto assets as a natural crypto asset. Corporate equities, we know, for the companies, government bonds for the nations, mortgages serves property owners, and crypto assets serve decentralized application. And next slide, please. The first decentralized application, nothing else than a software decentrally applied and without a trusted central party. That's basically it. And Bitcoin in summer is basically the first DApp for payments, the first decentralized application. That's all it is, but it's a lot. And the academic pedigree actually is impressive. Bitcoin is not an innovation. Bitcoin is actually quite a revolutionary combination of different technological streams that go way back in history, and somebody, a group, a person, we don't really know, Satoshi Nakamoto, combined various things and said, if I combine it this way, it could actually work. And it seems that the first application works quite okay as a template to be considered. Now I stop here to talk about Bitcoin, crypto, and the next generation of money. I would say we are in midst of an exponential evolution where people are, from their minds, still quite linearly programmed, and it served well because we had to fight a tiger in the jungle, we had to cross a road, and these are all linear things we judge very quickly and can assess, and we have all the programmed fight and flight mechanisms, but this has nothing to do with the technological landscape we're in. And an example I'm happy to share sometimes is when you do a linear 30-meter progression, and I ask you in 30 steps, 1 meter, what's the distance you would have done? And obviously linearly, it's the 30 meters. If I would ask you to do the same experiment, you have it in different variations, this example, when you do the same steps, the 30 steps, but double each time the length of the step from 1 meter, step 1, 2 meter, 4 meter, 8 meter, and I will prompt you what's the distance, then it's hard to believe that you would circle actually 26 times the Earth in the same experiment, 30 steps, but just double the steps each time. Now I'm ending here. 1904, the streets of New York, we have pictures from those days, were full of horses and just 1 or 2 cars. And I have here a quote with me, and then the president of the Michigan Savings Bank was actually advising the Henry Ford's lawyer, Horace Rackham was his name, and he was asking about these upcoming cars here. And then he said, the president of the bank, the horse is here to stay, but the automobile is only a novelty, a fad. And I would take that because then only 10 years later, the same streets were actually full of cars. And now we are in the next phase, of course, because we learned maybe the cars is also not something we should sustain, but it should help us to understand that we are in a world which is dramatically changing. And now I'm a mountaineer, and so I know exactly that when you walk the ridge, you can fall off the ridge. So each and every step has to be taken very, very carefully, because it's always the next step you do. But not to walk means you will never reach a top. And that's why I think we have to keep our minds open, but always with a skeptical eye to it, because not everything is the thing we have to jump on, but to close and say no to everything is definitely not the road to go. It's not the road I would go. It's not the road I would like to propose to my kids. So that's it.
So thank you, Arthur, but we have one question. Is it okay for you?
Oh, any?
Okay, now I'll read. How do you see a disruptive connection between cryptocurrencies and the future of education?
Oh, on many levels, big question, right?
Yeah, big one.
A big question, but let me start with a very simple answer, because when I was heading as executive at the bank and bringing the first Bitcoin offering in Switzerland, that was back in 2017, together with Bitcoin Suisse, and people were quite skeptical, even young people. And then I said, cryptocurrency, so the crypto technology applied to money, if you want, in summary. I said it's a AAA approach, because it's an anti-Alzheimer action plan, because it's a bit complicated. It's not as simple as put the key and pedal down the gas and it works. No, we are not yet there. So the honest answer is probably from my side, and I'm a scientist in my base education, I don't really know. But when I see what I see today, I can only assume that it's pretty changing. If it's disrupting in the sense that it is breaking apart things, there I'm even a bit more cautious. I'm probably, maybe that's a good Swiss attitude, the coexistence of good stuff is actually the good stuff. And so I'm not fighting existing things with something apparently new and good and cool sometimes. No, 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 no. It's actually striving for the next better template, and maybe we have some coexistence. So I'm not in the camp of disruption and with implication the old will disappear, but probably it's a good way to think that better things have a chance. And if this is a 90-10% change or a 10-90% change, well, honestly, I don't know. It has a potential to do that, of course.
So thank you. We don't have, at the moment, we don't have questions. So thank you very much for the presentation. And I trust your words will ignite curiosity about the future of money within our community.
Thank you so much.
So thank you. And now let me invite our next speaker, Kyle. Can't wait to hear your thoughts on courageous leadership. Kyle, the stage is yours.
Thank
and
you
welcome again.
Oh, thank you so much. This is amazing. I'm going to share some slides from my side, but just on my screen. It's amazing to see everybody again. Esther, it's amazing to see you. I was so excited to see you again. Last time we hung out was in an airport. Paul, thank you so much. Jos, thank you so much. Arthur, thank you so much. Team, thank you so much. And to all the amazing people who are watching this, I share Jos's sentiments, which is to celebrate you guys for being on these types of meetings, to coming and getting the knowledge share. It shows your enthusiasm to learn, which is very powerful for this particular topic. I'm going to do some voodoo on your screen quickly. I'm going to share some slides with you. And I'm going to go through something quite rapid fire, which is taking you through some learnings over here, some frameworks and models. I would love to approach this because you've just heard from some incredible speakers and insights. There'll be a few things that we've been doing in the background here to link together. So just a reminder, you've heard this a few times. Today, right now, is the slowest rate of change that you will ever experience again for the rest of your lives. You've seen it. Arthur just so eloquently just showed you how quickly things are moving, and Paul as well. But what does that mean for you? What that means that you are changing and evolving at a rapid pace too, whether you like it or not. You're absorbing information, you are needing to have an opinion and a perspective about what's happening, and the rate of change is a forcing function for us to shift. So imagine yourself, if you're a business leader, a business owner, a parent, you know, somebody looking to start a new big idea. If you imagine yourself a year from now, or 3 years from now, or 5 years from now, and you had to state shift yourself into that future version of yourself, what do you think that version of yourself would start learning today to become that person? It's a very powerful way to start getting your mind to a place. This is something we do at Be Courageous, which is solving for the present from the future. We love to reverse engineer the system. Instead of solving for the future from the present, dealing with the anxieties and pressures of today, which we have to do, but instead of mounting another pressure on, let's actually go out to the future, state shift and imagine what that could look like, and we can go out as far as we want, and then say, how did we get here? And when you do that, it actually starts to open up the category of your learning. So I'm going to go through a framework we've just put together for you here. Usually I do this with post-it notes if we were live in person, but this is sort of the next best thing. So imagine me peeling off some post-its here. I'm also going to keep you waiting. I'm going to start with number 2 instead of number 1 for these 4 big things. But I find that with the future of learning, mindset is crucial. For anybody here that is helping others expand their mindset. And again, Esther, thank you so much for your work. Yours, everybody as well, thank you for your work, because you're going out and you're challenging mindsets. You're educating people on how to start thinking differently, how to look at the world around them and make big connections. But that mindset piece for the future of learning is so important. And for those of you, this may seem very obvious, but I'll remind you, you've got 2 minds inside your one mind. You have a very operational and analytical mind, which is also how you perceive, process, and take action on data. And then you also have this very creative mind, unknown, this one that is non-judged, the one that is super expressive. And each of these parts of us need to be fed. They need to be fed. And right now, a lot of the time what happens is that we don't make enough time for creativity and taking on new information. We're taking it in, but it's more from a perspective of observation than it is real learning. We're scrolling all the time, we're looking and we're reading, but it's it's observation. It's almost like we're watching someone else live this life, and what is our opinion in that? How do we stage shift and actually get into taking more affirmative control of what we absorb, what we learn, and what we want to process, and how we take action with that? So mastering our creative and analytical mind is super important, because we do see the new through the lens of the old. We will look at anything coming at us to confirm the biases and the education that we've had. We want to confirm, we want to justify our learnings, which makes new innovations sometimes very difficult for us in our work. We do a ton of innovation. The number one thing that blocks anyone learning something new or taking in something new is their ability to not figure out how it fits with the old way that they were doing things. Right now, we're in a very interesting situation because we're breaking that. We're breaking that. It's being broken for us. But what is challenging us in our thinking and how we absorb information and how we learn is it's showing us where we are at in our thinking. Are we governed just by conditioning, which is that when we see things coming at us or we want to take on new information or learn new things, you know, do we have our biases and prejudice to new information? Are we fighting it? Are we in a fight of flies or freeze? Are we governed by rationale, which means like I can take new things, but they have to, I'll only take them in if they're logical for me, if they're sequential, if they're backed by science. None of these are right or wrong. They're just human nature. It's where we at. Are we actually driven by new creative original thinking? And I'm sure each of us on this call will find ourselves somewhere here, and we float between these. Are we creatively, strategically creative, or are we ungoverned? You know, I'd love to see, if we could, see a show of hands. Does anyone feel like their thinking is ungoverned? You know, where they're in a state of trance or prayer, or feel like they're insane because they've got these big ideas, and can we action on it? Or are we fighting with the own rationale inside of our minds? So our mindset for the future of learning is important. The second really big piece here is about our energy. When I talk about energy, I'm talking about where we are putting our energy. And although this is a very generalist statement, it's something we've been observing in when we work with leaders to push and get breakthroughs, to help them see new things, learn new things, apply new things, unlearn old things, is that we've experienced that people approach future learning in four sort of ways. They see opportunity, or some actually just don't see any opportunities. They're very stuck in the way they've always done things. So new things could be right here, screaming at them, banging on their door, and they just won't see the opportunity. They won't see the opportunity to go and learn, to go and try, to go and experiment. The second is, which is a terrible pandemic, I think, in my mind, is that there's a lot of opportunity to evolve and change and learn something new and uncouple from who we are. People see the opportunity, but don't do anything about it. The third, and I think this is where teachers are super fundamental, because they're helping to shift, to see the advantages in being able to evolve and advance. Then the third is they actually see the opportunity, and then they go learn the things to solve it. I'm going to try. I'm going to wrestle. I'm going to fall and fail. I'll try again. And then there's a fourth kind that we've noticed, is that they are thinking way ahead. The avid learner. You know, you've heard about the great minds of the business who read 26 books a minute. And I don't know, I'm over exaggerating. But, you know, there's a great book I just got from Jim Quick called Limitless. He says this is the one book to learn all books, which is this idea about how you can absorb knowledge and apply the principles within the new things you're learning in a strategic way into your life. But these are folk that anticipate the opportunity that they're seeing and then go and solve ahead of it, not waiting. And that puts us into some interesting places about where our learning capacity comes from. Are we chasing other people's literature or other people's ideas, meaning, oh, well, that's where the world's going, I have to catch up? Am I trying to defend everything that I have learned because it almost is part of my identity, which makes it hard for me to change and learn anything new? Am I just trying to improve on somebody else's plays, someone else's doctrines, someone else's thoughts and thought leadership? Or am I out really allowing my uniqueness to go and experiment and try and say, what am I learning here? What am I actually understanding? And then figuring out how to get that knowledge out and share it with the world. The third really big one here out of these four, and then there's a couple of small ones, is taking action on your learning. What we found is to take action on learning, which means that we can learn, but if we don't do anything with what we've learned, we become very knowledgeable in our own minds, and we can feel really smart, and we can have incredible conversations. But if we don't action on it, what is the benefit for the reason for learning it for everyone else? And so two frames we asked, which is to advance yourself if you're a business leader, there's two really important questions. What's the business question that you're trying to solve for right now and in the future? And imagine this moment right now. We have a lot of things to solve for. What are the new things that you do not have the skill in, that is a gap for you, by which you could go and learn? What are some things that you did learn that were very inspiring to you and you may have just forgotten because you haven't had the necessity to apply it? Go pick those bodies of knowledge back up, get re-inspired, re-engaged, and then figure out what's happening with your customers in the market. Where's their panic and fear and concern? Where is their energy moving to? So you can figure out what are some things you could learn to get ahead of that. It's very powerful when you ask these questions to acknowledge the gaps that you have. And if you're finding that your problem's really tough for you right now, one of the best ways to expand learning and learn from others, like what we're doing on this call right now, the amount I've already learned in the last couple of hours is amazing, which is, in my mind, I'm constantly trying to make the problems or the pain points or the compassion points that I see in the world harder for me. Because if it's harder, I have to go and learn something new. It forces me out of just my comfort zone. It forces me out of just depending on everything I've always known. It forces you to go out and think bigger. It forces you to go out and push. This is what Arthur was talking about, the expansion. This is the exponential curve. It's what Esther's been talking about, which is, stimulate the young mind. It's what Yosa's talking about when she's saying, like, you just look at what is happening in the world of AI. And the learning that those machines are doing, we're learning from them at the same time. But look how excited she gets when she talks about it. Wow, we can actually create an AI mentor for you. Imagine what will come up. That's making problems harder. That's asking interesting questions. So when we go into the future of learning, there's just a few things here in these 4 pieces that I would love for you to, if you can do these middle pieces here within these 4 bigger constructs. These are just reminders for you. Being accountable for your own learning is moving from being at the effect of the things around you, saying, I don't know how, I can't do this. I'm at the effect of this. There's nothing I could do in this situation. To actually putting yourself into causality and saying, well, what could I do here? What's the skill I could learn? What's the conversation I could engage in that might build a bridge of knowledge for me to take action in a way that I haven't before? Accountability is key. Consistency is, I don't just read a book once and then spend my whole life implementing one. Consistency for learners and avid learners in the future of learning is at the rate of change. We have to be able to digest information, shed what is no longer relevant for us, adopt some new things, and even start to figure out, make sense of what is it that we've been experiencing. Because every single one of us here has a unique perspective on the world that has insights and wisdom to share that would help and benefit someone else's life. That consistency is there a way that I could read 5 pages a day or 10 pages a day, just small micro bite sizes? If you do that every day, you'll get through a whole bunch of books in a year. You'll be absorbing interesting information. And if it's towards solving for something bigger for yourself, it'll actually fuel you to seek out the right avenues of knowledge to push your thinking. Now, a third one that you've heard here from each speaker is about this idea of being open-minded. Being open-minded to absorb and learn new things is you have to have the ability to have a filterless way. And I'll get to a filter in a minute, but the open-mindedness piece here is you'll see that things happen outside of us, but we have to get through our filters before anything comes into our conceptual mind and then emotionally connects with us enough to start taking action on it. Our biases and our filters will distort, generalize, dismiss, and delete information if we do not have a practicing of open-mindedness. Open-mindedness often means that I hear what you're saying, even if I might disagree with you, but I'm open to your opinion. Right? Some of the most interesting conversations are to have strong debates with somebody where they have completely, there's that idea that one of the 5 people that you should spend your most time with is someone that actually disagrees with you, but does it in an intentionally positive way. It's a challenge for you to expand your mind and look for new things. The other one here is to experiment. Experimenting is key. You've heard this across all the talks today. The future of learning is about experimenting. It's learning and trying, it's application. We don't judge each other if we're going into the kitchen, right? And we want to try and experiment with new meals or new foods or go try new flavors and stuff. Most of the time we encourage each other. If you take that as a metaphor for the rest of your life, it's actually very powerful where you can go with that. Because our mind, to some degrees, must reach this destination before our life does. When we are experimenting, when the greats are experimenting, for all of you, you have an idea, you have a vision, you have a dream, you have something you're trying to achieve, make, create, develop, change, solve, and you've been imagining it. You're imagining the state when it's already done. That is your mind reaching the destination. If today you can recognize there's a gap between where you are and where you want to be, almost our responsibility for ourselves and to others is to go and gather the learnings, go and immerse into the knowledge that will help us achieve that outcome. But we have to be able to experiment with that. A good friend and colleague of ours, Mark Bonchek, talks about this idea. He's shifting this concept of failing to falling, which means that if we're not falling, like a child falls to be able to figure out balance, skiers will fall to figure out their edge. You know, mountain bikers, people that are pushing the extremes of physicality will fall to understand what's possible. If we aren't falling and learning, we're not progressing. We're actually staying stuck. So within that, there's a consistency and also an adaptability that is really, really important. When we talk about adaptability from our mind, we've noticed, especially with the pandemic, it's very interesting how that's disrupted a lot of people's lives. And you'll notice, even for ourselves, how fixed we have been on creating our identity around rituals and routines that we believed were very important in serving us on a daily basis. We became attached to those, we became tethered. What this is forcing us to do is to adapt. Who would you be without that routine? Who would you be without being able to go every day to your coffee shop? Who would you be without being able to see those same people or go do your exercise or run those same plays? Who would you be without that? We have to adapt and create. Being unattached and untethered means that use the things around you as stimulus, creativity, inputs, as tools, and maintain your own identity separate from needing to be fully attached to the things around you. That will allow you to learn and unlearn, as Paul mentioned earlier, in a very, very amazing and adaptable way. And one of the last ones here that I want to talk about before we get to the big reveal, which has already come up in the talk today because it's very powerful, but being a role model. And you know, this is where I celebrate Esther a lot in the times that we've been able to travel and I've seen her talk. What she's been able to do for young minds, I believe, is a really great example here of role modeling. And as I'm learning about the other speakers, everybody here is a good example of role modeling. They're going out and putting themselves out there first. They're trying, they're setting an example. And in setting an example, what they're doing is they're living with intention. They're living clearly. I see that there's a better way to do something. I see there's a better way to do something for me. So I'm going to live intentionally. I'm going to learn. I'm going to create. I'm going to try. I'm going to practice vulnerability. The necessity is stepping up because everyone's always watching, and now they're watching more so than ever. We saw it in the chat stream, right? Our kids are constantly watching us and they will mimic us. So are we showing up at our best? Are we demonstrating how we're learning and how we're adapting and how we're problem solving and how we're going after gaining new knowledge and surrounding ourselves with good minds and good human beings? And are we treating ourselves and others with respect? How are we practicing that level of influence? As a learner, learners will always say, I am a perpetual student forever. My purpose may be adapting, my goal may be adapting, but I will always be a student. I will always be a learner because it's necessary for me to be able to advance and show up to be my best for myself and others around me, and to provide really good influence. Because as we're learning together, just like evolution, the same way our planet operates, it doesn't take the bad stuff with it. When evolution is going through evolution, it tries a whole bunch of things. It lets go of what doesn't work. It really lets it go, and it keeps the best pieces of it and then adapts from there. That's such a powerful piece of influence. So if we treat and respect each other, and we respect knowledge, and we keep respecting our mind and the advancement of our shared sentiments together, we get to be really powerful role models. Now, the number one thing is, I believe, is an outcome, which is why it says equals over here. It's an outcome. When we practice our advancing our mindset and expanding it, when we practice our energy in action, accountability, consistency, open-mindedness, experimentation, adaptability, and being a role model, the net outcome of that is exactly what Esther just talked about. It's courage. It's courage. Courage to be vulnerable, courage to be your best self, courage to speak your truth, courage to try new things, courage to be creativity. And be courageous, we operate on a principle that says another word for creativity is courage. We don't always wait for the perfect conditions to go try something. Generally, sometimes the greatest advancements have come out of the greatest adversities. Now just imagine the level of courage. Now somebody doesn't always wake up and goes, today I'm going to be courageous. I mean, we try, but what we're actually doing is today I'm going to push forward and see where my mind takes me. I'm going to channel my energy in the right way. I'm going to take action and think big and dream big. And when I face those hardships and challenges, when I have to work with people and our team works with people, or we see the obstacles we have to overcome to achieve the thing we want to achieve, the net outcome of that is courage. And the more courage, the more we get motivation. Because our momentum comes and our motivation comes from trying new things and learning new things. So I will leave you with this before we go into Q&A. In the future of learning here around courage, is what does your internal courage want to learn? There's a voice inside of you. There's a courageous voice inside of you that's saying, you'll see a book, you will see something, you'll see a talk, there's a body of knowledge, there's something, there's a calling inside of you. And there's something there which says, I don't have all the answers. And it's saying, go there. It's the same way. It's like, I want to take a trip to some, a vacation to some country. There's a calling. What does your courage want to learn? Where does it want to guide you? And I promise you that if you follow that signal and calling, it is one of the most exciting adventures. It's rough and exciting at the same time, but this is what helps all of us to advance forward. So with that, I thank you very, very much for the opportunity again to talk with all of you and to be here. We're going to open it up for Q&A, and I've also got some bonus resources for you guys. There's a link here. If you go into that website and just put in /bonus, the password is courage. This page updates for you. There'll be some things that are there right now about helping you figure out purpose, helping you advance leadership. There'll be some creativity tools being put in there over the next week. But use that as a resource page for yourselves to get some extra advantage. And with that, I thank you all very, very much for the opportunity. And I'm absolutely going to look at Q&A right now and see what's going on.
Kyle, fantastic. Thank you so much. I think that Alessandro has a question for you. Alessandro?
Yes, Kyle, thank you so much. And as usual, you was a step ahead of us. I prepared the slides.
Oh, amazing. Thank you.
I want to spend some words on that because he was so generous. I don't want to. That's a message to our community. Kyle and Paul prepared a very generous giveaway for the entire community. Here, of course, it's just a snapshot, but we will reach you out offline with the classical follow-up 2-3 days after the meeting, and we will provide you all the necessary information to join in. Kyle, as me and Andrea, basically we are managing, I don't know how to classify the waterfall of questions. I have an offline chat and Andrea is managing the online chat. If you allow me, I would start with 2 quick questions, I believe very relevant, that I received offline.
Great. And if we don't have time to get through all the questions, please send them to me. What I do after these talks is I do actually craft responses. I'll send them to you and you can send it out to the registration list if that's helpful. I just wanted to plant that seed as well.
Thanks, Kyle. The first is coming from Alberto. It's really interesting. I like it because it's one of my mantra and says like that. I truly believe that we are born on this planet to be all that we can be. Which is, in your opinion, your key skills or feature to enable this dimension of greatness that we believe is our dimension?
So the question, could you ask me the question again?
Yeah. Which are the key skills or ability to enable the fact that we are born to be all that we can be on that planet? How we can be the maximum, our...
Oh, how we can be, I see. Thank you so much. Thanks for reframing that for me. How to be maximum. I'll share something with you. My personal purpose is to help activate extraordinary potential, both in myself and others. I believe that most of us have a next level of potential we haven't even realized. And if you can feel, sorry, I didn't get the name of who asked the question, but if you can feel that there's another level to you inside of you, if you can feel it, if you know that you can sense that there's a next level, sometimes the answer on how to get there, what the next step isn't always there. Tapping into that feeling and just exploring what is that? What is it saying to me? Where is it directing me? Where's the thing that gets me most excited? What's the biggest pain point when I look out at the world and I go, I just don't want to tolerate that anymore. I don't like looking at it. What's my compassion point? When you find those things greater than yourself, that live inside of you, that resonate inside, and then you see those bigger things outside of you that you'd like to aspire to, those are your signals. Those are your signals to start moving, and then do everything you can to wake up in the day, build your daily agenda and your structure and your commitments and what you put your energy and priority on to move towards the things that bring you the most joy and that are moving towards increasing and expanding that feeling inside of you. And you'll notice what will happen is that the answers will start to show up, because it is a bit of a demystifying, it's like, it is a little misty, it's a little foggy. We feel this thing, but we're given the gift of the inspiration, but we're not always given the gift of the roadmap. And what we have to actually then do is go and build the roadmap in real time while we're following that instinctual direction. So I hope that helps. But I would say just really get those things down on paper, look at them, pressure test them, and then start moving towards those.
Thanks, Kai.
Thanks. You have one more?
Yeah, I have one more, if it's okay with you, Andrea.
Yeah, of course.
We are biting your ears, Kai, and your time, as you can see.
No, great.
The second one is coming from Maria. She says, I have to summarize it a bit. My company is paying for me a mentorship program to push me out of my comfort zone. My mentor is quite gentle and doesn't challenge me so much. I truly believe that in my experience, my greatest growth area have been enabled through fear and pain. Do you believe that fear and pain are the only or the key activator of a change process?
Whew. This is a great question. All right, this is a really great, all these questions are such great questions. Okay, so two things. One, applause to your company or the environment you found yourself in, that they're going to actually like invest in you to challenge you. Great. If you feel your current mentor isn't mentoring you enough, find another mentor or dimensionalize your mentors. Get a coach. Everybody here, I highly recommend get a coach. Get a coach that's going to challenge you, not just agree with you, but challenge you. Very, very important. Now, the other part of the question, could you help me again just real quickly, Alessandro, just the second part of the question?
She was basically saying that the greatest achievement in her life were obtained through leveraging on fear and pain.
That's it. So with fear is an interesting motivator. I would highly recommend to not only building a relationship with your fear is important, but reframing it, renaming it is very important. What we've noticed with fear right now, there's two things that people have the most fear around and the most pain around, which is the fear of loss. I'm going to lose something close to me. I'm going to lose my identity. I'm going to lose something that gives me validity. So the fear of loss, that is usually one of the things that stops people from acting. If they can imagine loss, they'll stay in not such great situations, or they will avoid stepping out if it means changing too much. It's a very scary journey. The second one is the fear of the process, that it's going to be hard to make the change. It's going to be hard to learn the new thing. It's going to be hard to adapt. It's going to be hard. Those two pieces are, those fears can be quite debilitating. They can really stop us from doing stuff. What we have to do is create something that is far greater than the thing we fear. That's where purpose comes in, massive transformative purpose, a moonshot in our singularity world. We call them MTPs and moonshots. Something that's greater than the fears. You'll feel the fear, and I've got something that I really want each and every single one of you to try. The next time you feel afraid, ask yourself, am I actually afraid or am I excited? Because the concept in the body is the same. The feelings show up the same. We've just been conditioned in fear for so long. Most of the things we have in our world are conditioning us in a fearful way. But sometimes it's excitement. And we can actually say, well, the excitement and fear, they give the same feelings to the body. Am I generally afraid? Or am I excited and just, it's the unknown. So it feels scary, but I'm not really that afraid. If we can remotivate and change those, our relationship to what we fear and how we talk about fear and say, okay, I see that as a challenge. I see that as a growth opportunity. I see that as something to advance my learning, to advance my knowledge, advance my skills. You'll start to notice that the things we fear actually lose their power over us. And what we're doing is we're putting our eyes on the thing beyond the fear. And the net outcome of that is then courage.
Thanks for that, Kyle. Andrea, you are on mute.
So we have one question from Massimo Generali, our guest from last time. And the question for Kyle is how we can spread courage in organization.
I love this question. And I believe, Paul, if you're still on here as well, please jump in here as well. Paul and I are doing this together in spreading courage around organizations. One of the best ways is to role model it. It really is. The way we spread courage is to, and I think I would follow Esther's work very deeply here, is to role model and demonstrate. You give someone the opportunity and you create the nurturing environment for them to try, and for them to actually try and fall down and get a little hurt or get a little dusted. But instead of going, bang, that was bad, you get demoted, you out. It's not that. It's like, well, what did we learn? Let's try again. Let's try again. When you want to spread courage, it's about taking on things together, but leaving somebody isolated and siloed is one of the worst things we can do. Building community and tribe around the things we want to work on is absolutely critical in our world. What's also absolutely critical to spread courage is to role model that. It's very hard to ask someone else to be courageous when we don't practice courage. It's one of the hardest things about leadership right now. To go out and demonstrate, put yourself forward, make big decisions, try things. And it doesn't mean going out and be like unrealistically silly. What it means is go and demonstrate that, yes, it's scary. I tried once. Oh, it wasn't as scary as my mind was making it out to be. I'm going to try it again. Bring someone on the journey. Invite somebody to take on a challenge that is maybe bigger than what they're used to. Like the question we just had, that they're being challenged in their organization. That's amazing. You know, I think I would borrow from Esther again and say, the vulnerability piece is share your journey, share your real feelings, instead of just going, it was great, and I just nailed it first time and it was perfect. It isn't about that. It's never perfect. It's never perfect. You actually have to share the vulnerable side of it. It was like, that was really hard. That was, oh my God, that was so hard. But here's what I learned. And here's what I would do the second time, the next time around. That is how we start spreading courage. It sends a different message and it gives a different level of permission inside of an organization. I don't know if Esther or Paul has anything to add to that one, but it's because I know this is such an important topic right now, more so than ever. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, Kyle, I think that you're absolutely right. We've been seeing this where people, it's that cultural engineering that Astro Teller talks so much about. You know, if I really want you to go out into that big possibility, I can't give you a scary place to land. You know, I've got to give you an understanding that you can't just go out and, as you said, be silly. But go out, learn something, come back and tell us what you've learned. Nothing's going to show up in a perfect way. The analogy I gave a little earlier was about flying over the Amazon. The Wright brothers crashed. Let's never forget that, you know? So you just had to keep going up and up and up. And that idea of how am I receiving the fact that your idea isn't perfect yet, right? And how am I setting up the culture within the organization to be able to receive that, to be able to operationalize that process of going out, experimenting, learning, coming back without it being a punishing environment. We talk so much about a punishing environment versus a collaborative environment, a permissive environment, an environment where you can safely experiment. Because if we take down the amount of risk that somebody perceives with an experiment, the amount of actual courage they need goes down, because now they can just start to push out the possible. So yeah, couldn't agree with you more. And the vulnerability as a leader is critical as well.
Yeah. Okay. So do we have any question, Alessandro?
Not anymore.
From the chat? No. So this is now the perfect timing. So thank you, Kyle, and thank you, Paul. Amazing inspiration to accelerate thoughts on courage, but I would also say on leadership. So to all of you, we come to the end of our second event, but we are thrilled to say that our third event will be announced very soon. You already saw it will be in June. For this reason, we genuinely invite you to follow us on Zurich chapter social media and or to become members of our chapter. So this is goodbye from my side. And now I will give the spotlight back to Alessandro